A lot of people would look at one of the achievements would be getting out of the Iranian nuclear deal. Former Vice President Biden and Senator Harris have said that if they're elected, they would renew the Iranian nuclear deal. What impact could that have on Israel and the region?
It would be a disaster. It would be a complete disaster. Iran is a very dangerous country. We have made Iran far less dangerous than they were 4 years ago. We have broken the Iranian economy. We have made it much more difficult, much more expensive for Iran to engage in adventurism and terrorism throughout the crescent of Yemen, of Iraq, of Syria, and of Lebanon. And they are pulling back. They will continue to pull back, I believe, if we keep the sanctions on. The worst thing we can do right now when we have them on the ropes is to let the pressure off. Remember, we've eliminated the greatest individual state sponsor of terrorism, the greatest individual participant in Qasem Soleimani. So we're really on the right track. We're going to prevail. We're going to, I believe, make peace with the Iranian people, who we have no grievance against, who the Israelis have no grievance against, make peace with the Iranian people, and hopefully get the Iranian regime to end its malign influence. And I think when you look at the Abraham Accords and our position on Iran, you see the juxtaposition is important. On the one hand, with the enemies of the United States, with the enemies of peace, with the sponsors of terrorism, our position could not be stronger. Our position is unambiguous, and we provide no quarter, no solace to people who want to engage in state-sponsored terrorism. On the other hand, where we have friends, where we have allies, the sky's the limit for how far we can go. And I think creating that dichotomy, we put the choice to the people. Where do you want to be? You want to be on the side of peace, prosperity, opportunity, or do you want to be on the side of violence and terror and ultimately poverty? That's the choice that I think the Trump administration has created better than anyone else that's preceded us, and that's why I think we're having success.
Earlier today, you were in Ariel, right in the middle of Samaria, and I was watching you on YouTube. You talked about the Pompeo Doctrine, about no longer having Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria illegal under international law. What was the significance of your visit and what you signed today? What does that mean for the biblical heartland?
Well, first of all, with regard to choosing Ariel, we chose the institution that was most aggrieved by the old way of doing business, right? Ariel is a first-class university with 16,000 students. I think about 20% of them are Palestinian. And the United States and Israel are collaborating, but we had this anachronistic rule that we couldn't fund Ariel because of its postal code. So we did away with that today. This is what it means. What it means is that we are moving further and further away, whether it's in our position with Israel and the Palestinians or with Israel and the rest of the countries. We're trying to get away from the old narrative of ancient grievances, of violence, of terror, and say, look, folks, here it is. Here are the opportunities. We can work together collaboratively on science, on technology, on agriculture. Okay? We can do that. We can make our children happier and more prosperous. We can build a better world for our grandchildren. We can go back to just, the old narrative. And this is yet another step in that direction of moving the Middle East towards a position of growth and prosperity and away from these ancient grievances that have never been solved and never resulted in a day of peace.
Is that part of the peace to prosperity and part of the developing business between Israelis and Palestinian businessmen?
Sure, because as Israelis and Palestinians work together more, and they have been. There are industrial zones where Israelis and Palestinians work together and prosper together. There aren't enough. As that, is given further life, of course, as people, work with each other and prosper together and build things together, the temperature drops dramatically. And then, political issues can get resolved. The biggest mistake that the Palestinian leadership has made, they've made this from day one, and I've taken them to task many times. Their view is no people-to-people engagement, no quality of life improvements until there's a political solution. Where has that left their people? We had a conference in Bahrain before the normalization. We had it about a year ago, I think. There were huge players that were there with some of the biggest checkbooks in the world looking to help. And many countries attended. Palestinians boycotted. This is exactly the wrong path towards peace.
In a little while, you're going to be going to the Knesset. You're going to be speaking on Jerusalem and the Bible. What are you going to be sharing?
I am going to be speaking about the original Abraham Accords. The original Abraham Accords was the reconciliation between Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac was the second son of Abraham. Ishmael was the first. They were rivals. Abraham was very pained by that rivalry. He sent Ishmael away, but then God heard the voice of Ishmael. He made him a father of 12 princes came from Ishmael, and Isaac and Ishmael reconciled before Abraham passed away. We're doing that again 3,500 years later, and I think that that's an appropriate Bible story, Bible lesson for today with the Knesset.
Well, Ambassador Friedman, I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you, Chris. We had pleasure.